All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Tuesday. It is the 19th day of November. And Thanksgiving coming up just a little over a week now. Looking forward to that holiday. Should be a lot of fun getting together with family. Just family this time. We've had friends over sometimes, but it seems like our friends are all with their families. So it'll be a real nice week for me. And I will be broadcasting. I always broadcast throughout Thanksgiving week. Maybe I'll take off. Probably I will take off Thursday and maybe Friday too. But otherwise, you'll have me probably through at least till Christmas week. One other programming note, though, I will be broadcasting tomorrow, or at least I certainly plan to, but it will be another Wednesday where I start late. I am going to be heading downtown unless something changes. There's always, everything's always fluid, but at this point it looks like I'll be participating at the U.S. Senate again in support of Palestine. So I'll be rallying down there with Code Pink for a second week in a row, and I may continue that procedure because it looks like they're there every week, and I do feel an absolute moral obligation and imperative, if you will, to do what little I can to try to stop the genocide, to do what little I can. And tragically, it's not very much. That's why I do this program in part. That's kind of my main focus now, and that was my reasoning for supporting Jill Stein for president, and my belief we have to move away from the duopoly. We'll talk a lot about that today. You saw the thumbnail, Just Good Enough to Lose, referring to the Democratic candidate. And I came up with that because Nate Silver, the Oracle, says she's a replacement level politician, which means really, really good according to him, but not really, really good against other professional politicians. I reject that entire analogy, somehow pitting politicians, professional candidates, and sometimes winners, right? She's won a lot of races. But I don't think there's any I don't think the analogy between those who get elected to office and people who play Major League Baseball, basketball, football, I don't think that holds up. I think there's some pretty important distinctions between them. Maybe you could analogize better between politicians and actors. I wouldn't analogize necessarily between politicians and pop stars, musicians, although there may be some closer overlap there than, say, with athletes. All right, let's start with where we always focus, and I'll get to that, I promise, the genocide, which Harris Biden continue to support without any wavering whatsoever. I guess our only hope maybe that this will stop has to be with Trump, and it's a pretty faint hope because he campaigned as the better friend of Israel, right? The better ally of Israel even than Harris Biden. And obviously that would mean a terrible enemy of the Palestinian people. 50 more killed. I think there were over 70 on today's Tuesday. So there were over 70 killed on Sunday, and then 50 yesterday, Monday. So it's horrific. There's nothing you can say except we have a government of sociopaths. And I'm going to use that term sociopath again, but later on in the program, I use it advisedly. There's a reason for that. 43,972 Gazans killed since October 7, 2023. Guess we should have maybe a moment of silence or of mourning. It's the only way I can look at it, and that's certainly what we're going to do tomorrow at the Cap. Before I get into some of the longer form topics and discussion today, by the way, you can always call me 240-242-5646. I'm always available for calls. That's why I think my program is a little bit different than the others, because I am, not only do I take your calls, I want your calls. I want us to dialogue. I want us to have a conversation. I want us to try to solve these terrible, terrible problems that we're facing, and the terrible tragedies that for which we're responsible, and that many of us are suffering from. That's why we do this program. That's why I do it. And the issue of a dialogue, respectful, it can be somewhat, I get, passionate, maybe sometimes partisan, heated, but ultimately respectful, where we listen to each other, and with the assumption, until it's, debunked, right? Because a lot of times people don't act in good faith. A lot of times people have hidden agenda that they don't share with you, that they don't want you to know about. And you can't have a good faith dialogue with them. But I always assume good faith with my callers, my listeners, commenters on Halitics at Facebook. I always assume good faith until proven otherwise. Some people I really, really disagree with and who push my buttons, piss me off. But I still think they're doing and saying what they say because they truly believe in a disinterested fashion. In other words, they're not getting paid. They're not on somebody's payroll. They're not in somebody's pocket who is rewarding them for presenting the views that I find often reprehensible. But as long as you're not corrupted by money, you're not actually taking money to present a particular viewpoint, I'm pretty open to a dialogue with you. I do want people to care about the Palestinian people. I don't want them to just completely discount them as not mattering. But that's your view, and you really believe that, then I guess we have to talk about it to a degree. I'm not going to waste that much time. This is a really, really good short by Chris Hedges that expresses well why I have been so loath to condemn Hamas and the participants, perpetrators in the October 7 attack on Israel at the music festival. So let's play this clip real quick because I think it really does kind of crystallize where I come from.
What are your thoughts on Norm Finkelstein's analogy comparing October 7th to the Nat Turner slave rebellion? I think that is exactly the right analogy, because when Nat Turner organized the slave rebellion, they killed every white person they saw. Remember, the people who burst through the security barrier in Gaza, many of them had never left Gaza. They had spent their entire life in a concentration camp. And the only Israelis or Jews that they had ever encountered were trying to kill them or certainly oppress them. But I think that analogy is a good one. I think that's precisely what we saw was a slave revolt.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're not quite, the Gazans don't quite fit the definition of slaves, but certainly an oppressed people, a powerless people, a people kept in terrible, terrible conditions by Israel. And you have to foresee that when you abuse and mistreat and persecute and oppress people for years, decades, half a century or more, they are going to respond. That pressure is going to build up to a point where, to the extent it can and does escape, a lot of people are going to be scalded, even people who maybe really aren't responsible, aren't guilty. We saw that happen on September 11th as well in this country. It's not quite completely analogous, but certainly American empire has done terrible damage to millions in the Middle East, and they responded. It's not quite the same because the people of Gaza are clearly, as Hedges said and Finkelstein often says, they're living in a concentration camp, and their response to that was totally foreseeable. I cannot condemn them nearly to the degree, obviously, as I can condemn Israel for its atrocities, its war crimes, its genocide. This isn't really my favorite story, so I probably shouldn't lead with it, and I probably shouldn't tell you that it's not my favorite story, but I'm going to because it's first in my slide deck, and so there you go. We'll get to Tulsi. We're going to get to the GAETZ gotcha, pathetic partisans. I don't mention Tulsi, but actually that really goes into pathetic partisans, right? We'll talk about her in a moment. And I do want to hear from you, 240-242-5646. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe. So I read this in the Silver Bulletin. Now, Nate Silver, you have to pay him if you want to read most of his brilliancy, his words of unparalleled, unmatched perceptivity. You got to pay. But every now and then he throws you a bone and gives you something without having to pay for. You can see my subscription there is not paid. They're asking me to upgrade to paid. I'm not going to do that. But I thought this was kind of intriguing. So Kamala Harris was a replacement level candidate. And Silver mostly blames Biden. Still, she was a mediocre candidate in a year when Democrats needed a strong one. I would say she was a little less than mediocre. And yes, I think Democrats did need a good candidate. They probably didn't have anybody on their bench. But he uses the term replacement level. And before we get to what he defines, well, actually, let's go to that discussion first before we get into some of the other mistakes that Silver believes Harris made. So he starts with this is towards the end. Replacement level is a player's on the fringe between being a big league or not, someone who you can call from AAA, right? So they're somebody who, you can put them in, but they're not on balance going to be they're going to be about as bad as anyone in the major leagues is. And yet, as Silver points out, and completely accurately, these athletes are still better than nearly anybody else anywhere. And he points out, watch NBA players taking warm-ups before the game. Even the worst player in the NBA is an incredible outside shooter. I thought this was an interesting little digression that Silver points out. A friend who's really good at tennis gets destroyed by his coach, who was not a particularly good tennis player in the pros, but is obviously better than just about everybody else. So I think that discussion when it comes to athletes is very, very correct. But here's the thing. Sports, you have statistics. You have objectivity. It's very, very easy to measure one player against each other. There's very little subjectivity anymore. In baseball, who hits the most home runs? Who strikes out the most batters? Whose ERA is the lowest? Which team wins? That's how tennis, it's even easier because it's mano a mano. It's one player against another. So the player who wins more is better. It's just that easy to tell. And that's true in pretty much every sport. There are some sports where it's a little more subjective and you kind of like figure skating or something like that. But even still, you can see when you see a figure skater, they can do all sorts of things that pretty much nobody else can do. Twirling on the ice, for example, or jumping in the air on the ice. Almost no one can do that. But what do politicians do? They raise money. They give speeches, and that's kind of where Silver comes down. He's like, well, they give really, really good speeches, right? She has plenty of talent, and she builds relationships and gives speeches better than I could, or 99.9% of the readers of this newsletter might. Yeah, I reject that. There are plenty of people who are glib, who can speak. Well, I can speak. Well, I can do this program, and I'm far from the only one. Just turn on a YouTube, any YouTube video, and you have plenty of people who can talk off the cuff. She's actually not a good politician. She's terrible when she's not prepared. She can't handle even softball questions. She is good at building relationships with money people because she does what they tell her to do. But that's about it. So this really totally rubbed me the wrong way. That statement that somehow, yeah, she's good enough. No, she wasn't good enough. She wasn't close to good enough. And you look at somebody like a Bernie Sanders who, would you say he's such a great politician? He just speaks bluntly, generally, not all the time, a lot of the time. There's so much luck in politics. Somehow you hit, the zeitgeist at the right moment, or you have billionaire backing. So to identify Harris as a good candidate, I have very, very big problems with. And I have a problem with it for another reason, because it divorces her as a candidate, the quality of her run, from her actual policies, right? It doesn't seem to matter to Silver whether you support Medicare for all or you don't, except to the extent that the electorate may agree with you or not. To the extent something can be measured, then, he can judge you, he can rate you. But a great politician inspires people. They present a vision. And I would say a good, for someone that I'm going to want to support, it's a positive vision. It's a vision for a future that is better than the present. Barack Obama kind of did do that, right, with the hope and change. The problem is he betrayed the promise that he made to the American public, even if it was implicit, even if there weren't explicit promises to do A, B, and C. He told us, he gave us to believe, he inspired us to believe that he would be on our side. Kamala Harris never did that. She never came close to doing that. And therefore, I'm not going to credit her. She didn't, there was just an effort all the time to be as non-controversial as possible. That's not being a good politician, especially at a time when people, with good reason, were desperate. So I find it very frustrating that Silver would somehow identify Harris as a great politician or as a good politician or even replacement level. She was poor, and many people would be better at. Are you saying mic check? No, I'm talking. You're not hearing me? Yeah, I'm sure I'm going out there. Let me go. I can see my levels. Let me hear myself. Yeah. I saw Emogi saying mic check, but I've been talking the whole. There's been no. Maybe there was an issue on your end. I don't know. So yeah, I have a huge problem with that statement. You can't compare politicians. Now, maybe actors, because actors are trying to fool you, and they're presenting themselves as something that they're not. So maybe there is some comparison there with politicians, but certainly not an athlete. And the reason I hesitate with music too is because I do think in music now, this has really changed since the rise of music videos, MTV, which obviously now doesn't do music videos, but appearance it was always important. It was always important in music. Appearance was always really important. But talent does shine through in music. People you have a beautiful voice. You're a great instrumentalist. It is much more possible to rate musicians on a somewhat objective scale. Do they hit their notes? There's a guy on YouTube who does that. Wings of Pegasus is the guy's name. Phil from Wings of Pegasus. And he actually plots out notes on on a scale showing just how closely singers hit each note perfectly. So it can be done objectively. You can't do that, politician. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. But Yeah, I'm not buying her as anything special or, as better than even average. I think a lot of average Americans who speak from the heart, who speak sincerely, she so clearly did not do that. I think a lot of us would have been much better politicians. The reason she got where she is because she is a mouthpiece for the billionaire class. That's how she got there. So the other reason that, and I think completely wrongly, Silver identifies is her strongly left-wing positions. It wasn't that she was left-wing, and she did say she supported Medicare for all for a hot second. She did say she was opposed to fracking. I don't think those are strongly left-wing. Most Americans support Medicare for all, and I'm not sure about fracking as much, but probably they do want an end to fracking. It wasn't that she took pro-people economic and environmental positions. It was that, as he points out, her pivot was very clumsy. She couldn't explain why, and she had no answer except, I'll do exactly the same things that Joe Biden did, or how she would govern. Under those circumstances, how Silver could claim she was a good politician is he can't reasonably, legitimately do so. But the reason he does is because he's embedded. He's part of the establishment. He's part of the, he's a go-to guy. He goes on TV now and then. He gets invited to talk shows. I believe now he's off ABC. It used to be 538 was part of ABC. It was part of ABC affiliate ESPN. Then I think it just became part of ABC News. He wrote for the New York Times. If he took too aggressive, too critical, too harshly critical a stance against Kamala Harris, if he blamed the elites for anointing her, if he claimed that, and accurately so, she was beloved by the billionaire class because she was bought and paid for, she was sewn up, they never had to worry that she would do anything that they didn't like. If he said that, adios to any more interviews on CNN or MSNBC. No more special reports for the New York Times. The spectacle that we're seeing, the piling on Tulsi Gabbard, is really, really ugly. I'm not perfect. She has demonstrated there's some Islamophobia, I believe, on occasion, not all the time. And if you're going to ask me for specifics, I don't have them. I believe she's been too supportive of Israel. She hasn't called Israel out for its genocide, and I don't. For her to be National Director of Intelligence, I think on balance, again, a better pick than we could have expected, but she's not going to, unless I'm, mistaken, she's not going to take on Israel. But Tulsi's gotten an awful lot right. And that's why the New York Times is going after her. That's why there's a concerted effort by the Democratic Party and its media, shills, New York Times, to demonize Tulsi Gabbard. And I call this pathetic partisans because if Democrats believed in what they at least ostensibly are supposed to believe in, which is, reducing massive Pentagon budgets, trying to be better global citizens, pushing for peace, addressing the climate catastrophe. If that's what Democrats are for, they should try to work with Tulsi Gabbard because she's in many ways been a progressive. She's supported, she had the guts. It's remarkable. And people love this, by the way. She said, you know what? I can't work for Hillary. I don't agree with Hillary. Hillary's pro-war. Tulsi said, hey, I'm a soldier. Hillary's making us more dangerous, making us less safe. She's creating a more dangerous world. That was in 2015 when she was on the Hillary, or she was working for the DNC, and the DNC was totally in the pocket of Hillary Clinton. In fact, they were actually in the pocket of Hillary Clinton, because after Bernie dropped out, or even before Bernie dropped out, Hillary was giving money to the DNC in return for all sorts of support from the DNC. And Tulsi said, I can't deal with this. This isn't right. We're betraying our base. And she went to work for Bernie. It was a remarkably bold and selfless maneuver. And instead of being praised, instead of even being admired, grudging admiration, she's attacked at every turn. And by people who are supposedly progressive. So here's the New York Times with this very provocative headline from yesterday, totally smearing her as a favorite of Russia's state media. And let's go through it. First of all, I just highlighted there, she's raised alarms among national security officials. Well, that's obviously a positive. Our national security state has made us less safe. They've targeted people. We've had all the drone attacks because of alleged enemies that identified by the National Security Administration. They sent Edward Snowden over to Russia. So the fact that the NSA doesn't like, or national security officials don't like Tulsi Gabbard, that's a huge green flag, a green light in her favor. But let's go through what the Times says here. So here are the things they criticize her for. When she was still in Congress in 2017, Gabbard traveled to Syria and met the country's authoritarian. He's authoritarian. My gosh, we never, ever, ever in this country support authoritarians, except for Tulsi Gabbard. She met with Assad and accused the U.S. of supporting terrorists there. That was in 2017. How could she possibly do that? It's obviously that provocative paragraph is designed to make you think, oh my God, she's on the side of this authoritarian Assad. Didn't he gas his own people? Actually, he probably didn't. The evidence is that he did not. But let's go back to the New York Times, because that headline there, that paragraph there, presents the statement, she accused our country of supporting terrorists. How dare she do that? Well, if you read back, it's quite astonishing how, I guess the New York Times figures that people don't have Google and they don't have nytimes.com and they can't go back and look at articles from the past in their archives. So going back to this headline, this is from 2016. The Times is fretting and rubbing its hands together in dismay that how dare Tulsi go to Syria in 2017 and accuse us of supporting terrorists. Well, in 2016, the New York Times carries this article, Syrian rebels launch offensive to break siege of Aleppo. And we're going to go through that. It's not a huge amount of detail, but some, just to show you what exactly that article tells us. And what it tells us, actually, and we'll get to it in just a sec, but what that article tells us is that, yeah, we were absolutely backing terrorists. If we weren't deliberately, our policy led to the support of those exact terrorists. So let me see if I can get this up because I'm having trouble with it. So here's more from that story. This is by Khalid Saad and Ann Barnard. And you can see the Syrian government forces that I guess we were against, right? We were trying to stop Syria. We were funding these rebels. That's what the U.S. government was doing at that point. Were they terrorists? Because that's what Tulsi, how dare she? How dare she say we were supporting terrorists? So from that very article, this new offensive against the Syrian government was a strong sign that rebel groups vetted by the United States were continuing their tactical alliances with groups linked to Al-Qaeda. And as a result, Russia, which also was very afraid of Al-Qaeda, was going after those groups. They say there's little distinction between them. So Tulsi's absolutely right. And the New York Times flat out said it in 2016. They said, yes, we are backing groups that are working with the terrorists. We're providing supplies to rebels that are working with the terrorists. In other words, we are supporting the terrorists. So how could how can the New York Times be all up in arms and high dudgeon that Tulsi said something that they themselves said? What are some other horrible things that Tulsi Gabbard has done? Right after the invasion of Ukraine in 22, Gabbard blamed the United States, and by the way, the language is so tendentious, NATO for provoking the war by ignoring Russia's security concerns. Well, that is true. We did. We did. We kept pushing to put Ukraine in NATO, and that was completely ignoring Russia's security concerns. By the way, the article that Arlen and I went over yesterday, that was in yesterday's or 2 days ago, Sunday's New York Times, made the exact same point. So this criticism is, again, if to the extent it's criticism at all, it's absurdly, they're saying Gabbard blamed the U.S. and NATO for provoking the war, which they did provoke by ignoring Russia's security concerns, which they did. She has since suggested that the U.S. covertly worked with Ukraine on dangerous biological pathogens. Maybe they did, and was culpable for the bombing of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. That's the only thing, by the way. They don't say she was wrong. None of the New York Times doesn't say, oh, she was wrong when she said that we were supporting the rebels that were part of Al-Qaeda or that worked with Al-Qaeda. They don't say, oh, she's wrong. They just say, this is what she said, how awful. And then, like under their breath, but it was true. Then blames the U.S. and NATO, how dare she? But it was true. Then she says the U.S. is culpable for bombing the Nord Stream gas pipeline. That they try to debunk by saying, but European prosecutors and U.S. officials say the sabotage was carried out by Ukrainian operatives. Okay, well, if they were carried out by Ukrainian operatives, they were almost certainly trained by the United States. That was apparently an operation that required a lot of coordination, support. The Nord Stream pipeline explosion was underneath what's that sea over there? I can't even now. It's the Baltic Sea. Ukraine doesn't border on the Baltic Sea. Ukraine is on the Black Sea. So how did those? If it was Ukrainian operatives, how did they get there? Who are they coordinating with? It's almost certain that, yes, if it was Ukrainian operatives, which the U.S. and European prosecutors say, well, then probably the U.S. was part of that, behind it. So basically, everything that the New York Times criticizes Tulsi Gabbard for doing is for telling the truth. They don't like her truth. They don't like the fact that she's calling out empire. They don't like the fact that she's calling out our corruption, are promoting endless war, are supporting terrorists. They don't like any of that. She doesn't like any of that. They don't like her talking about it. That's the kind of person I want as my national security intelligence director. That's who I want as my national intelligence director. And the New York Times, despite all this negativity, this criticism, this attacks, smears, all in service, by the way, of the Democratic Party, after all that, No evidence has emerged that she has ever collaborated in any way with Russia's intelligence agency. No evidence that she ever collaborated with Russia in any way. After all that, those attacks, it's awful, but it's pathetic what the New York Times is doing here. It's absolutely pathetic. And this is all coordinated. The Times coordinating with this. You know, I have to subscribe to the New York Times, right? Because there's just too much news, too much information. But I read it with a very jaundiced eye because it's just not an honest broker. It's not nonpartisan. It's joined at the hip to the defense establishment, the Democratic Party. It's been that way forever. Nothing changed after Judith Miller was caught stovepiping Dick Cheney's misinformation about the Iraqis. Nothing has changed. Here's your coordinated plan smears by the Democratic Party against Tulsi Gabbard. And before I play these clips, I just want to make one more point. Again, this proves not only the Democrat Party is dishonest, it's clearly not on your side. If it were on your side, they would be looking for ways, and I said this in 2016 when Trump was elected, work with the guy, figure out areas of overlap, of agreement. He's trying to end, we think, this horrible war in Ukraine, which even the New York Times now says it's time to get it over with. Work with him on it. Go to him and say, hey, let's end this killing in Israel. By the way, if you do that, he is going to, because Trump is not an ideologue. He's a narcissist. Smooth him down. Tell him how great he is, how smart he is, and then you'll get what we want. But you won't do that because you don't care what we want. You don't care what the public wants. You just want your little power back. We've got to move to another party, folks. We've got to abandon these people.
The Department of State's guidance and secretly, clandestinely went to Syria and met with Assad, who gassed and attacked his own people with...
Right, we know that, that has not been confirmed. Subsequent evidence, subsequent investigation by the UN concluded that they don't know who was responsible for the gassing. So she's lying. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a liar, and she's lying there about Tulsi.
Chemical weapons. She's considered to be essentially, by most assessments, a Russian asset, and would be...
That's just one of those people. I mean, they're just so awful, so dishonest. Okay, but it's just Debbie Wasserman Schultz, ardent, aggressive Zionist, corrupt politician, takes money from payday loan operators. Go look that up. That's like one of her pet industries, the payday loan people. She's stopped any efforts, I believe, by Florida Republicans. She worked her butt off to keep Florida Republicans from taking some steps, some action against payday loan operators. But okay, it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So, we don't expect anything from her, really. We shouldn't. We shouldn't expect anything good from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and we don't get it. But progressives, here's a progressive darling, Elizabeth Warren. Remember, a lot of people thought we were supposed to support Elizabeth instead of Warren, instead of Bernie in 2020.
What we're talking about with people like Matt Gaetz is very different from what we're talking about with people like Marco Rubio. And we just have to...
So she likes Marco Rubio. Hey, he's in the club. He's part of the Senate. He's not going to upset the Washington establishment apple cart. So we're fine with little Marco. No problem there. But my God, what if somebody's going to go after all the people we're tied into, the people that we help get jobs, that help us get jobs? We're going to go to MSNBC. No, we can't have that, says Elizabeth Warren.
In mind. But do understand with Matt Gaetz, and you've already made this point, he's not the only one out there who is unqualified and who raises whole questions like Tulsi Gabbard does. You really want her to have all of the secrets of the United States and our defense intelligence?
Well, why not? I mean, the people who've had those secrets have just screwed everything up time after time. Leaked them on occasion when it suits their interests or suits the interests of their bosses. I mean, yeah, I don't see any problem with Gabbard having those secrets.
Agencies, when she has so clearly been in Putin's pocket.
Oh my God! So she says it. She goes there. Elizabeth Warren. She's in Tulsi's in Putin's pocket. What does the New York Times say about that? Even the New York Times. No evidence has emerged that she ever collaborated in any way with Russia's intelligence agencies. She just believes that we shouldn't be at war with Russia. She believes we should work with Russia. We should try to solve problems. We should try to address terrorism with Russia. That's what she believes. And she's absolutely right. But you know what? If that view takes hold, takes root, a lot of billions of dollars ain't going to the defense establishment, ain't going to the Mike, ain't going to Lockheed Martin, ain't going to Raytheon. That would be terrible, just terrible, I guess, for Elizabeth Warren. I mean, I'm more and more comfortable in my decision to not vote for Democrats. This is despicable. It's absolutely despicable. Okay, Warren, Senate, she knows Rubio, maybe she likes him. She doesn't know Tulsi. Tulsi was in Congress, in the House. There's AOC. Maybe she'll have something nice to say. Because after all, AOC presents herself as pro-peace. She's against all the money going to the Ukraine, to kill people in Russia and kill people in Ukraine and kill people in Gaza. She says she's against all that. So maybe she'll embrace, or at least not be so condemnatory with respect to Tulsi Gabbard.
And Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, as much as she says that she's an anti-war person, she's not.
Yeah.
She supports.
I mean, it's so ridiculous for her to say that. She's not anti-war, according to friggin' AOC. She went to Syria to end the war. She supports an end, obviously, to the killing in Ukraine. How dare AOC say that? She stopped working for Hillary at the DNC because of Hillary's warmongering decade after decade. How dare AOC say that?
Very pro-war individuals.
Including
abroad.
in Syria.
And
Okay, no. Oh, just, they don't know what it. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're stupid. What I'm going to say is people don't do their homework. You think, oh, okay, well, if Joy Reid tells me this and AOC tells me this, it must be true. No, she went to Syria to promote peace. It's just awful what these people are doing. You can't support, they're wholly corrupt. The truth doesn't matter to them. They're loathsome. All right, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. I don't see any, where's my chat? Restore chat. Oh, okay, there we go. Mike is fine. Smile more. You're not missing too many teeth. But I do have a chip in one of them. Thanks, guys, for your support in the chat. Yeah, call in. 5 watching. Okay, let's get to Gaetz. It's okay if you don't. I'm good. I got lots of topics here. So this story is getting a lot of play. And I'll talk about what I think about it. So first of all, Do I believe that Matt Gaetz probably, or do I believe if you said, did he or didn't he have sex with a 17-year-old in 2017? Yeah, I probably do believe that, okay? Am I going to convict him because some lawyer says that? No. Lawyer says his client testified. I don't know, where did she, I guess she testify to that investigation? She saw Gaetz having sex with an underage girl. Maybe she did. I'd like to see the transcript. But you know what? And I'm going to give my response to all this. Is it a bad thing? Yeah. You shouldn't, and it wasn't, you shouldn't sleep when you're 35 years old. And one of the defenses that Gaetz has, he was 35 at the time, he had just gotten, and I don't know that he's even made this defense, but he had, just taken, just one, a few months ago, he had joined the Congress. He was 35, so he's twice her age. Maybe he thought she was 18, 19, 20, whatever. Obviously, she was very young. It's icky, right? It's icky. Now, there's no question. It was consensual. She was allegedly paid for it, so there's not rape. There's statutory rape. Do I think that should disqualify him? Probably. If he were convicted. Yeah, if he were convicted, absolutely. So if you want to make a big deal about this and say he should be disqualified, and again, I don't think the fact that he knew or didn't know her age should matter. But he wasn't charged with a criminal offense, and we proceed. I thought in this country that you're innocent until proven guilty. Now, that doesn't mean you automatically get to be the attorney general. And, if there were someone waiting in the wings who was going to be, in my opinion, not any worse or maybe better than Gaetz, I would say get rid of Gaetz. But my concern is having a Justice Department that pursues policies that I believe are best for the American public. That's ultimately what I think is most important. If you say to me, yeah, but hell, that means you think a rapist or a statutory rapist or a sex predator or even a murderer. Now, no one's saying Matt Gaetz killed anybody, but you're saying, hey, even if it's a murderer, if you like their policies, you think they should be attorney general. And my answer is, if they're a murderer, charge him with murder. Matt Gaetz committed crimes, charge him with the crimes. If he's guilty, goes to jail, that's the end of it. He can't be attorney general if you're convicted of a felony. But what matters to the American public aren't peccadillos, because that's what this is in the end. What matters is what policies he'll pursue. Will he make life better? Will there be change for the better? And there are reasons to think Matt Gaetz might do some good things. Yeah, I know he introduced a bill to get rid of the EPA. I don't agree with that. I think we absolutely need the EPA. But the bottom line is Trump won this election. And in a Trump administration, having an attorney general who urged him to pardon Edward Snowden, who criticizes big tech repeatedly, wants to use antitrust law to heal these massive oligopolies and monopolies. He opposes NSA spying, which is very relevant because the Justice Department is often going into court, or they're, working with the NSA FISA courts to spy on us. So if he's opposing, he wants to say no more FBI. These are good things. He's not a global warming denier. He called with Ro-Khanna. He worked across the aisle with Ro-Khanna for a military withdrawal. He opposes the proxy war with Russia. These are all positives. You going to get someone better than that? You think Trump's going to nominate someone better? This is why, by the way, he's so despised. Yeah, the sexual assault, it's partisan. We want to get rid of him. We want to embarrass Trump, not we want the best government we can get under Trump. No. But they don't give a crap. The Democrats don't care about. They oppose a lot of that. They want more NSA spying. That was as much Obama's deal as it was W's. They don't want a pardon for Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden embarrassed Obama. He outed this marriage of government and big tech to spy on all of us. That's what Edward Snowden did. Democrats want to punish him. So, Gates from the beginning has said this war with Russia is a terrible, terrible thing. And by doing that, he calls out the Democrats who support it. He makes them, the people like Adam Schiff's of this world, look like the pieces of human garbage that they are for being all in for that war. So that's why they can't stand Gates. They don't give a crap if he had sex with an underage prostitute. I think we should care. I don't think it's good. But if we're not going to get someone better in that role, then okay, we accept it. Let the Republicans deal with it. And that's what I said on, social media. If his nomination is torpedoed, it is most unlikely Trump will propose a better candidate for justice. I mean, isn't that the bottom line? Shouldn't that be? Politics is the art of the possible. What's possible under Trump? What can we do that will be better? What could be done by Trump that might make life better for average Americans? Democrats don't care about that. Trust me. If they cared about making life better for average Americans, then Kamala would be president right now. They may care a little. They don't care nearly enough. I was thinking about this. I didn't get to it. It was somebody on Halitics, a friend of mine on Halitics, said that, not just a Facebook friend, an actual personal friend, attributed Harris's loss to racism. And I haven't talked too much about that. I think those, I will get to it. But I think we should strive to come up with non-malignant explanations before we come up with malignants for why people vote. And there were lots of good reasons why people did not vote for Harris. Apparently, a lot of people told Crystal Ball reported, reported how many people in AOC's community, in AOC's district, said that Harris's support for the war on Gaza was a big factor. It clearly cost her votes among young voters. It clearly cost her votes among Michiganders. This was a big factor. That's not racism. That's concern for an ethnic group. Do I think if Kamala Harris had been white, a white man, would she have won? I don't think so. I don't think an Amy Klobuchar, someone similar, would have won. No. I have said on this program, I'm sorry for the digression. I'll get to some more partisan crap. But I've said on this program I thought Chris Van Hollen would have probably beaten Trump. And I base that not on him being a white man. I don't think that would have hurt. There may have been some people who would have voted for him because he's a white man. But I think maybe some black women especially might have stayed home because they would be so angry that Kamala was passed over. But I do think that Van Hollen speaks very well, and he responds to questions directly. And that was one of Harris's biggest weaknesses. I also think Van Hollen would have separated himself. In fact, he already has separated himself from the administration on Gaza. And I think that would have served him better in the election. Is that racism? I don't think it is. I think there are policy differences. I think we should strive to demand the best Democratic or the best candidate. We should only vote for the best candidates. She wasn't that. I believe that's why she lost. I think we have to move away from the Democratic Party. I don't see how we can. You see how partisan those Dems are. They go after Tulsi, even though she's actually quite progressive, and she certainly was progressive, and they drove her out of the party. We see that in Democratic electeds. We also see that in the institutional left, which I find so troubling. And this is why I say don't, not a penny, not a cent for these people. So do they learn anything? After the election, this was last night, I didn't watch the video. Our Revolution has this they have this Zoom call. And it's a discussion of how we reform party, not how maybe we need to abandon the party. Maybe we need to build a different party. That's not on the table. That's not under consideration. I was on a PDA call, Progressive Democrats of America, pretty similar to Our Revolution. There were a lot of people on that call who wanted to move to the Green Party, who wanted the PDA to join forces with Greens. And this was completely rejected by the president or the executive director of that. It's not even considered here. It's we reformed the party. And why is that? Look at who is on the call. 2 DNC members, Larry Cohen and Jane Gleb. Well, of course they're going to stay riding that tired nag that is the Democratic Party that can't win, that doesn't even want to win if it means embracing pro-worker, pro-peace policies. It's long past time to move away from them, to move away from this institutional, I don't want to call them left, institutional, democratic, ostensibly left, because that's all they are. They're also shills. Democratic Party. PDA over the weekend. Special guest Mimi Kennedy now as we address combating Trump and MAGA. So not how do we address combating corruption in government, the billionaire class controlling both parties. How do we demand better candidates? Oh no, we're just going to stand right next to those Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Elizabeth Warren, AOC. We're just going to stand with them as we attack Trump. And by the way, make it harder and harder for the American people. From PDA, more from PDA. I think this explains exactly why they are going after Trump. And mind you, Trump's not I don't love Trump. I don't like Trump. But when he is under such concerted attack by the Democratic elites, it's like I have a tiny bit of sympathy for him. What's the reason for attacking Trump? He has a vision of obliterating the norms and practices of the U.S. government. Oh my God. We're going after the norms and isn't that a good thing? I thought that was like hope. Isn't that what hope and change is? We're going to change the government so that its norms and practices, which have in the past meant supporting the billionaire class, corporate America, corporate international, multinational corporations, means the norms and practices of the U.S. government, we go to war. If it's going to mean more profits, who cares how many lives are lost, including American lives? Isn't that a norm in practice? I think that this is what the institutional left has come to. They're defending the status quo. They're a corrupt, unjust, regressive status quo. That is what the institutional left has come down to. Not another cent. Not another cent. All right, it's been an hour. I did want to get into some of these back and forths I had on Facebook, which again go to this idea of partisanship. People who I want to believe are honest brokers, but demonstrate or have, to my satisfaction, have shown that they are not going to be honest about the role that the Democratic Party, the complete complicity of their party in where we are now as a nation and a world which is in a very, very bad and getting worse place. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Actually, we'll probably be needing stuff to discuss because like I said, I'm going to be downtown. I'll be on probably at 3. That's the plan, 3 o'clock tomorrow. I'll have a lot to tell you about what we at Dirksen, the Senate office building. Protest the continuing support the U.S. government is providing for the genocide in Gaza. One last point. I'm just going to make a promise to you, and I may break this, but I'm going to do my best. I will not, if there are trolls, if there are Zionist provocateurs tomorrow at the Senate trying to stir up trouble, I'm not going to respond to them. Got it out of my system last week. I'm done. I'm done with that, but I will be there for Gaza in my tiny little way, which tragically probably doesn't do much. Enjoy the rest of your day.